I stood frozen in the hallway as Chloe Mercer swept into my workspace, her entourage of junior executives trailing behind her like obedient ducklings. She was 23 years old with a business degree still warm from the printer, while I had spent 22 years building our international client portfolio. "Everyone, I would like to introduce Dwight Vance, who will be handling our legacy accounts," she announced, gesturing toward me as if presenting an outdated office printer. "From now on, he reports directly to me." The room went silent. Nobody looked at me. Not Clara Jennings from legal, not Lewis, who had been my direct report for 8 years. They studied their shoes, tablet screens, anything but my face. "We need fresh energy in the European markets," our CEO, Julian Sinclair, said, his hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Dwight can help you understand our history while you lead us forward." I was being turned into history while still breathing. "The corner desk near the supply closet will be yours," Chloe told me, pointing to a cramped space. "I need this office cleared by lunch." My office, my space that had witnessed countless late nights and breakthroughs. The wall displayed the thank you letter from our biggest client, Apex Holdings, after I saved their campaign during a disaster. "Understood," I replied, my voice steadier than my hands. 3 hours later, I watched maintenance workers carry my plaques in a cardboard box while Chloe directed the placement of abstract art pieces on my former walls. "The bulky desk goes too," she instructed. "It is ancient. The desk my team had gifted me after our department won Company Achievement of the Year. My new workspace had a wobbly chair and a computer that wheezed when starting up. My phone rang. Lewis, my direct report, sounded nervous. "Dwight, I am sorry, but Chloe has called a team meeting in the Willow Room when, right now. She said it is just for the team leads." I was being excluded. "No problem," I lied. After hanging up, I noticed an email from Chloe to the entire department. "Growth strategy implementation, moving beyond outdated methods." Attached was a 16-page presentation. I opened it and felt my breath catch. These were not just similar ideas to what I had proposed 6 months ago. These were my exact proposals, down to the specific market penetration targets for Portugal and Greece. The same proposals our CEO had deemed too ambitious when I presented them. A sticky note appeared on my desk at 4:30. My office, 5 p.m. sharp. "Chloe." I found her leaning against my old desk, tapping away on her phone. "Sit," she said without looking up. I remained standing. She finally glanced up. "Your European strategy proposal was well received in the executive meeting today." "You mean my European strategy?" Her smile did not waver. "Your research was useful groundwork, certainly, but groundwork is not architecture, Dwight. I have modernized and elevated your basic concepts into something actionable. You copied my work word for word in some sections." "That is a serious accusation," she replied, setting her phone down. "Especially from someone in your position." "My position?" "People who have been at one company too long often grow territorial, change-resistant. The CEO understands this transition might be difficult for you. Is that why you excluded me from my own team meeting today?" She sighed theatrically. "I needed candid feedback about departmental leadership. People are not always comfortable speaking honestly with their former supervisor present." The implication hit like a physical punch. She had been gathering complaints about me. "We are restructuring the department next month," she continued. "Some roles will be eliminated, others will evolve. Your future here depends entirely on your ability to adapt." The threat was unmistakable. "Is there anything else?" I asked quietly. "Yes, the Apex Holdings presentation tomorrow. I will handle it." The Apex Holdings Group, my client for 16 years, their CEO Nolan had specifically requested me for their annual review. Nolan specifically asked for me to present. I spoke with Nolan this morning. He understands the new direction. She was systematically stripping away everything I had built. "My role, my relationships, my reputation. That is all," she said, attention back on her phone. I walked out, passing the glass-walled conference room where my team still sat in their meeting. They fell silent as I passed, eyes darting away. Whatever Chloe had told them had changed something fundamental. On my cramped desk, a new email arrived from HR. "Performance Improvement Plan, confidential, a formal PIP, the first step toward termination." The document listed resistance to new leadership and territorial behavior. I had given 22 years to this company, postponed having children, worked through pneumonia twice, skipped my grandfather's funeral to save a key account. Now I was being pushed out by someone who had built her entire strategy on my work. I shut down my computer, gathered my bag, and left without saying goodbye to anyone. In my car, I sat silently for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, a strange calm replacing the initial shock. They thought they were watching a man being gradually erased. They expected tears, outbursts, a resignation letter. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, I did not cry. I did not vent to friends or family. Instead, I opened my personal laptop and began working. Not on my resume, not on a complaint to HR, but on a file, a very specific file that would change everything. My name is Dwight Vance, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the Senior Director of International Growth at a marketing company that had just merged with our biggest competitor. The merger had brought changes, certainly, But none of us expected the executive team to place a newcomer directly above me with no transition period. I joined the company 22 years ago, after spending my earlier career at 2 boutique agencies. We now had offices in 11 countries, and I had personally opened 7 of them. My team respected me, not because I demanded it, but because I had earned it. When Audrey's mother was diagnosed with cancer, I rearranged her entire work schedule so she could drive her to treatments. I worked 14-hour days myself to cover her clients, so she would not fall behind or face penalty. When Owen's apartment flooded during the spring storms, I helped him move his belongings and let him stay in my guest house for 2 weeks. When Louis struggled with his first major client presentation, I stayed late for a week straight, practicing the slides until he could deliver it flawlessly. I knew their children's names, their anniversaries, their dreams beyond our company walls. Chloe Mercer knew none of this. To her, they were resources to be optimized, pieces on a chessboard to be moved according to her grand strategy. During her second week, she called Louis into her office. He emerged an hour later, avoiding eye contact with me. The next day, he presented his new approach to our Nordic markets at the department meeting, an approach I had been privately mentoring him on for months. I watched as Louis sweated under the spotlight, while Chloe took credit for guiding his development. The same pattern repeated with Audrey and her digital architecture improvements, and with Owen and his client retention model. One by one, my team's collaborative projects with me were being reframed as individual breakthroughs under Chloe's inspiring leadership. She asked about your management style, Brenda whispered during our now awkward Wednesday lunch at the diner across the street. She was trying to get me to criticize you. She asked if you micromanage, take credit for others' work, or resist innovation. What did you say? I asked. Brenda looked down at her salad, her fingers trembling slightly. I tried to be diplomatic, but Dwight, she records everything. She had her phone on the table, face down, recording our entire conversation to compile a dossier against you. Chloe was not just rewriting the present, she was revising the past. By week 3, my team stopped coming to me with questions. Emails went unanswered. Invitations to client calls disappeared from my calendar. I was being ghosted within my own department. The final blow came when Nolan from Apex Holdings called me directly, confused about why I would not be leading their account anymore. Chloe explained, "You are taking on strategic planning instead of client-facing roles," he said. After 16 years without even a handover meeting, it was a sudden change, I replied carefully. Well, we specifically requested you in our contract renewal, Nolan said. We have been doing business for 16 years and I trust your judgment. If you are not involved, we will need to reconsider our options and look at other agencies. When I raised this with our CEO, Julian Sinclair, he seemed distracted, preoccupied with the merger stock details. Chloe has some innovative approaches to the Apex Holdings portfolio, he said. Give her a chance, Dwight. Change can be positive for legacy clients. That evening, I watched through the conference room windows as Chloe presented my European strategy to the executive team, my slides, my data, my conclusions, all with her name on the cover page. The executives nodded approvingly. Our CEO actually applauded at the end. I should have felt anger, but instead a strange clarity washed over me. I had been playing by rules that no longer applied, following a social contract that Chloe had never signed. It was time to change the game entirely. I went home and pulled out my external hard drive, the one where I had backed up every project, every email, every presentation for the past 15 years. Not for this moment specifically, but because I had always believed in protecting institutional knowledge. What I found as I searched through those archives stunned even me. I worked through the night, gathering, connecting, and analyzing. By morning, I had compiled something that made my hands tremble. As I saved the file, as I drove to work, I realized Chloe had made a critical mistake. She assumed my power came from my title, my office, my direct reports. She thought that by taking those away, she had neutralized me. She had not realized my real power came from 22 years of watching, listening, and remembering. From thousands of relationships built on trust rather than intimidation, from knowing exactly how our company functioned at every level, knowledge no org chart could capture. I arrived early before the receptionist had even unlocked the front doors. Before the cleaning crew had finished their rounds, I walked into the quiet office and placed a single manila folder on Chloe's desk with a simple handwritten note. For your review, historical growth, strategy, outcomes. Then I turned and left for my 8 a.m. client call, the one remaining meeting still on my calendar. When I returned at 10:30, something had clearly happened. People huddled in small groups, conversations stopping abruptly as I passed. Security guards stood outside the executive wing. Brenda hurried over to me, eyes wide. What did you do? I shared some historical context, I replied. Chloe ran screaming into the CEO's office 20 minutes ago. Then security came. They are all in there now, the entire executive team. I nodded calmly and headed to my small desk. Aren't you worried? Brenda asked, following me. About what? About? She gestured vaguely toward the executive offices. No, I said simply. I am not worried at all. At noon, an email arrived from our CEO's assistant. Meeting requested. Executive conference room. Immediate. The walk to the executive floor felt surreal. Eyes followed me, some curious, others fearful. Whatever was happening had rippled through the entire office. I found our CEO, Julian Sinclair, seated at the head of the table, flanked by our legal counsel, Clara Jennings, and the HR director. The atmosphere was formal and cold. Chloe was nowhere to be seen, likely kept in a separate room. Sit down, Dwight, Julian said, his expression unreadable, showing none of his usual warmth. I chose a seat directly across from him, placing my hands calmly on the table. The file you left for Chloe, he began. Where did you get that information? It is highly confidential. From our company archives, I replied, plus publicly available financial records and SEC filings. Clara Jennings, the legal counsel, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. You have made extremely serious allegations against a senior executive. I have not made allegations, I corrected her. I simply compiled data. The patterns speak for themselves, and they require a thorough response. Julian rubbed his temples. You are claiming Chloe deliberately implemented strategies at her previous company, Vista Media Group, that led to their collapse, and now she is replicating those same strategies here. The data supports that conclusion, yes. That is absurd, Clara interjected, pointing to the legal implications and the potential liability we face under the merger agreement. Why would anyone deliberately sabotage their own employer? I met her gaze steadily. 3 months before Vista Media Group declared bankruptcy, Chloe received a substantial payment of $2,500,000 from an investment group, Blue Crest Holdings, that later acquired their client list for pennies on the dollar, the same investment group that now owns 30% of our company following the merger. Silence fell over the room. Julian looked at the spreadsheets, then back at me. You understand what you are implying? Julian said quietly. I am not implying anything. I am showing you numbers, dates, and transactions that exist on public record. The HR director cleared her throat. Chloe claims you are retaliating because of the performance improvement plan, that you fabricated this conspiracy theory. I opened my laptop. Would you like to see the original sources? I have indexed everything. Julian's phone buzzed loudly on the table. He glanced at the screen, his eyebrows rising in surprise, then stood abruptly. Wait here, he said, his voice tense. When the door closed behind the three of them, I remained perfectly still in the quiet room. Through the glass wall, I could see them huddled in the hallway with several executives I did not recognize, likely representing the parent company's interests. 20 minutes passed before Julian returned alone, looking 10 years older. Chloe has been suspended pending investigation, he said, sinking into his chair. The merger oversight committee is flying in tonight. I see, I said. Julian studied me with new eyes. You have been with us for 22 years. Why didn't you come to me directly with this information? I considered my answer carefully. Would you have believed me over the rising star who promised to double our European market share in 6 months? You were so focused on the merger integration and satisfying the board that anyone raising concerns would have been dismissed as resistant to progress. You wanted a quick win to justify the merger to the public. His silence was answer enough. Julian looked down, unable to deny the truth of my words. You authorized her to place me on a performance improvement plan after 22 years of exemplary reviews, I continued. You allowed her to dismantle my team without consultation. You applauded when she presented my strategies as her own. He winced. I thought, he began. You thought she represented the future and I was part of the past. I finished for him. That is human nature, Julian. We are dazzled by novelty. What do you want, Dwight? To make this right? I don't want her job, I said. Then what? I want respect. Not just for me, but for every person who builds something valuable in this company. And I want Nolan's account back today before their contract reconsideration deadline. Done, Julian said. I stood to leave, but he stopped me. The file. How long have you been working on it? I have not been working on it at all, I replied. I simply pay attention. I always have. As I left the executive floor, my phone chimed with messages from team members who had suddenly remembered my existence. I ignored them all. At my desk, I found Brenda waiting. Security took Chloe's laptop, she whispered, and they are scanning her emails. What is happening? A correction, I said simply. By evening, Chloe's name had been removed from the company directory. Her office sat empty, the abstract art already gone from the walls. At home that night, I poured a glass of wine and finally allowed myself to process the day's events. My phone rang, an unknown number. Hello, is this Dwight Vance? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes. This is Eleanor Brooks, chairperson of the Merger Oversight Committee. I would like to discuss your findings in person tomorrow morning. Of course. I should inform you that Chloe has retained legal counsel. She is claiming wrongful termination and defamation. I understand, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. The information you compiled is concerning, Eleanor said, but her legal team is questioning your methods and motives. We will need to examine this thoroughly. In the meantime, I have instructed Julian to place you on administrative leave. Administrative leave? On what grounds? It is standard procedure during an investigation of this nature. We need to ensure there is no perception of conflict. I see, I managed. We will expect you at 9 tomorrow. Please bring all relevant materials. After hanging up, I sat motionless, administrative leave. In one swift move, they had equalized us, accuser and accused. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Louis shifting nervously on my porch. I should have stood up for you, he blurted when I opened the door. We all should have. I let him in without comment. Is it true? He asked, sitting at my kitchen counter. About Chloe sabotaging her last company. You tell me, I replied. You worked with her presentations. Did anything strike you as odd about her growth projections? He looked down. The Nordic market targets. They are impossible without sacrificing our long-term client relationships. I tried to tell her, but she said you had made us too cautious and that our growth was comfortable but stagnant. She told us individually that your strategies were obsolete and that she was the only one who could protect our jobs in the merged company. And what did you think? I thought he hesitated. I thought maybe she was right, that maybe you had become too conservative. His honesty stung, but I appreciated it. The oversight committee is meeting tomorrow, I told him. I have been placed on administrative leave, same as Chloe. His eyes widened. That is insane. After what you uncovered, they are treating it as a personal dispute. Her word against mine. But the evidence can be interpreted different ways, especially when one party has powerful connections. Louis's expression hardened. Tell me what to do. How can I help? I studied him. Why did you come here tonight, Louis? Because I was wrong. Because we all were. And because I have worked with you for 8 years. I know who you really are. I nodded slowly. Then that is what I need. People who know who I really am. The oversight committee meeting the next morning was held in our largest conference room. The atmosphere was tense, with the rain tapping on the high-arched windows and cold coffee sitting in paper cups. When I arrived, I found not just Eleanor Brooks and the executives, but nearly 20 people, including Louis, Audrey, and Owen. Eleanor, a sharp-featured woman in her 60s with a reputation for absolute efficiency, began the meeting without any pleasantries. Mr. Vance, she said, we have reviewed your file on Chloe Mercer. Her legal representation has provided a detailed response, claiming you have misrepresented data to create a false narrative due to personal animosity and fear of retirement. Beside her sat a polished man in an expensive suit, clearly Chloe's lawyer, who kept tapping his gold pen on the table. Furthermore, Eleanor continued, they have submitted evidence that you have been resistant to changes, underperforming in your role, and attempting to undermine new leadership. My heart sank. Chloe had prepared for this, building a case against me from day one. Before we proceed, Eleanor said, I should inform you that Chloe has offered to drop potential legal action if you retract your claims and resign immediately. The lawyer slid a document across the table, a resignation letter. The lawyer leaned forward, hinting at a potential lawsuit under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act if I refused. I looked at the paper, then at the faces. Julian avoiding my gaze, Eleanor watching coolly. Louis and my team looking worried. I picked up the resignation letter, feeling the weight of every gaze. This is quite thorough, I remarked, reading the clause that forfeited all my pension rights and health benefits. Prepared in advance, I assume. The lawyer nodded, offering a smug smile. We wanted to make this transition as smooth as possible, avoiding a costly public dispute. Smooth? I repeated. For whom exactly? For Chloe or for the investment group? Eleanor cleared her throat. Mr. Vance, I understand this is difficult, but actually it is not difficult at all, I interrupted, placing the resignation letter back on the table. I won't be signing this now or ever. The lawyer's smile faltered. I strongly advise you to reconsider. I folded my hands on the mahogany table. I look forward to reviewing her evidence and matching it against our actual records. All of it. Eleanor studied my face for a long moment, searching for any sign of hesitation. Very well, she said, her voice dropping. Let us begin. Eleanor Brooks distributed thick folders containing Chloe's counter-evidence. It consisted of emails taken out of context and selective performance metrics. I flipped through the pages slowly. Then I pulled out my own stack of folders, one for each person at the table. What is this? Eleanor asked. Context, I replied. The room fell silent as they began to read the folders I had prepared with Louis's help. They contained the complete versions of the emails, full performance metrics showing consistent growth, and notarized statements from my team members. Audrey was the first to speak. She told me Dwight was being pushed into early retirement and that I should distance myself to advance. Owen nodded. She told me there was a confidential performance issue with Dwight and we should align with her. She played us against each other, Louis added. The lawyer's face reddened. These statements are coerced. They are notarized, I cut in, each one given freely. Eleanor was studying the folders. This still does not address Miss Mercer's claim that your file on her previous company is a fabrication. No, it does not, I agreed. For that we need outside verification. I stood and opened the door to reveal a man in his 50s. This is Clarence Cole. I introduced him, former chief financial officer at Vista Media Group. The lawyer jumped up, his face losing color. This is outrageous. We were not informed of additional witnesses or testimonies. Clarence took a seat calmly, ignoring the lawyer's dramatic outburst. I was terminated 3 months before Vista Media Group collapsed after raising concerns about suspicious strategy shifts and unauthorized transfers. I kept secure backups of all our financial logs because I suspected corporate embezzlement, and those logs showed direct routing of payments from Blue Crest subsidiaries to Chloe's personal accounts. When Dwight contacted me, I recognized the patterns immediately. Eleanor leaned forward. "Mr. Cole, are you claiming Miss Mercer deliberately undermined your company?" "I am stating that the strategies she advocated for were identical to the ones that bankrupted us, despite multiple warnings, and that she received a substantial consulting fee from the investment group that acquired our client list." The energy in the room shifted. Julian turned to Eleanor. "We need to involve our compliance team immediately." The lawyer was frantically texting. "My client rejects these accusations." Clarence smiled thinly. "Actually, my termination agreement does not prevent me from discussing individual actions that might constitute financial impropriety." Eleanor turned to the lawyer. "Does Miss Mercer wish to respond in person?" The lawyer's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression souring. "My client is unavailable." He gathered his papers, his hands trembling slightly, realizing that their carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. Eleanor closed her folder with a definitive snap. "Then we will proceed with a full investigation. Mr. Cole, we will need your formal statement." "Already prepared," he replied, producing a sealed envelope. 2 weeks passed. The investigation proceeded, but it stalled. The investment group, Blue Crest Holdings, controlling 30% of our shares, applied significant pressure, threatening to withdraw financial support if the board pursued the investigation further. Julian met me at my home on Sunday evening, looking defeated. "The board meets Monday to finalize their decision," he said, placing a settlement offer on my counter. "This is the best I could negotiate for you under the circumstances. They want to offer you a generous severance of $500,000, keep your full pension benefits, and bury the case quietly. They want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement." I did not open the folder. I looked at the corporate logo on the front. It represented a company I had poured my life into, now reduced to a hush-money payout. Julian looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped under the weight of executive compromises. Instead, I spent the night uncovering the final piece. On Monday morning, I walked directly into the board meeting. Julian spotted me first. "Dwight, you are not supposed to be here." "I know," I replied. "But the board needs complete information before their vote." I handed Eleanor Brooks a sealed envelope. "This is the missing piece. The investment group Blue Crest Holdings that engineered our merger is actually a complex shell corporation controlled by our main competitor, Horizon Group. Chloe Mercer was not just sabotaging us for personal gain. She was a planted operative executing corporate espionage. This is a direct violation of the Economic Espionage Act under 18 U.S.C. 1832 and wire fraud under 18 U.S.C. for 1343. By placing her in key roles, they aim to weaken our client relationships, allowing Horizon Group to acquire our accounts. If you bury this, the board will be complicit in federal crimes and breach of fiduciary duty." Eleanor Brooks broke the seal, reading the document. Her face turned pale. The board members huddled in shock. Urgent voices called for immediate legal counsel. By afternoon, the Securities and Exchange Commission and federal investigators were in the building. Chloe and the Blue Crest representatives were escorted out by security, facing criminal prosecution. Julian called an emergency staff meeting, but I did not stay. I packed my desk. Louis and my team gathered at the exit. "Where will you go?" Louis asked. "Exposing corporate espionage makes one rather marketable," I smiled. "I have multiple job offers. My revenge was walking away on my own terms, my reputation restored. Sometimes the greatest revenge is rising so far above your enemies that they become irrelevant to your story."